Okay, so how is everyone doing? You can keep it there. I hope you are all doing well. So the topic I chose today, it was because I was listening to some talks from Brazilian Spiritist speaker, and she mentioned a little bit of it, and I got very curious and very interested, and I decided to bring this. And the presentation I have today is gonna be pretty much related to Christiana's lecture 2 months ago, I believe, and the last lecture from last month. So the topic is the science of well-being and Spiritism. Okay, so first, I'd like to tell you all that many of my talk today is going to be science related, as you could see for the title of the talk. And I'm going to talk mainly about the research of Dr. Richard Davidson. Does anybody know him? No? Well, so Dr. Richard Davidson, he is the founder of the Center for Healthy Minds from the University of Wisconsin in Madison. He is professor of psychology and psychiatry, and he's a neuroscientist. And he is the main researcher of mindfulness today. And he was the scientist responsible, actually, for bringing recognition, scientific recognition to the meditation process and the mindful process. So after many of his research and his publications, that's when all sorts of different institutions started adopting mindfulness as a practice. And this picture that you can see is Dr. Richard Davidson with the Dalai Lama, if you didn't recognize him before. But so Dr. Richard Davidson, he has a very interesting life story. And what happened to him is on the 70s, when he was a student at the university, he got interested in meditation. And he was almost kicked out of the university because he left for a retreat, a meditation retreat. And the university thought that he was jumping off the boat. But well, he went back and he pursued the career, and he knew what he was doing. And also at the beginning of his career, he wanted to study meditation. But then his supervisors advised him it would not be a good beginning for his scientific career. So he started, as pretty much all psychologists or psychiatrists studying neuroscience starts, and most of them keep doing this, that is to study the disease. And so he started studying topics like anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and many different pathologies. This picture of him with the Dalai Lama, so if you see any of his talks, he will mention that this meeting, when he met the Dalai Lama, it changed his life, and it changed his scientific life. So he was already starting, he was already doing a lot of research, and he was doing many public talks, and he was trying to get meditation experts to join him in the research. And for this, he went to many of different centers, Buddhist centers, to talk. And then he met the Dalai Lama. It was in the 90s. And then the Dalai Lama asked him, so you're using all these different tools and all the science to investigate the disease, anxiety, depression. Why can't you use the same tools to investigate kindness and compassion? And he didn't have an answer. So because he was very keen, he is very keen into everything that people advise him, actually. And then he said, well, you know what? it's a challenge. So why not? So then he started studying also these topics. And when the question that guides all his research from the beginning to nowadays is this question: why are some people more vulnerable to life's slings and arrows and others are more resilient? This is how he started, and this is what he keeps studying. The difference is that instead of now focusing on the pathology, he's also focusing on the good or positive aspects. So the first thing he noticed is that making a person more resilient, it was very, very related to what is called affective style. So you can detect this in people, and of course, people have different gradients of affective styles. You're not positive affect or you're not negative affect. Maybe you have a predominance of one of them. So positive affectivity is, it describes how much people experience positive emotions, and positive emotions are many different things, and even like joyfulness and happiness, pride, and not the bad pride, it's the good pride, the one that you can recognize something good that you just did and you're proud of it. So these are all positive emotions, and how they interact with others and their surroundings. So this plays a part on being a positive effect. Negative affectivity or negative affect is a personality variable that involves the experience of negative emotions. And then when we come to sadness, to sorrow, and even poor self-concept, like negative self-talk. So I started studying some of his papers. He used several methods. So Dr. Richard Davidson has now hundreds of published articles, all on good scientific journals. And luckily for you, I didn't have the time to read them all, but I wanted to. But I focused on some of them. And one of them was actually a review that brought some of his other researches. So that's what I'm using. And he used so many methods and multiple subjects for all this research. So first, he studied animals, he studied humans, and he studied different stages of development, from babies to adults. This is because he wanted to try to separate what is social construct from what is inherent in the human being. He studied people with moderate brain lesions, not severe brain lesions, but partially and not very deep brain lesions, normal individuals, people with brain pathologies with abnormalities in emotion, for example, people with autism. He then studied Buddhist monks, normal people, and people that he trained or were subjected to cognitive behavior treatment and compassion training, just to mention a few. He has more stuff. He used neuroimaging, self-reported questionnaires, economic gain tests, blood sample tests, testing for hormones, antibodies, inflammatory reaction tests. And this is only for the papers that I've read. So to mention some of the results that I want to focus on. So first, he noticed that the levels of activation of some parts of the brain are correlated with positive or negative effect. And remembering that positive or negative effect plays a part on telling how resilient people are to all different situations in life. So what you see in this slide, when you look at this colorful picture of the brain, I don't want you to really understand what it means. I don't really deeply understand it, actually, but it shows in a color scale parts of the brain that were activated when he studied. So when you see orange, it means the parts that had more difference in activation when he tested positive or negative effect. So this is where the difference was. All parts of the brain are active, some are a little bit lower, but when you see orange tending to red, it means that that part is acting differently, whether you're seeing a positive effect or a negative effect. So that led him to believe that this part of the brain was where that was happening. And when you look at the graph, this is what he found for some individuals that he studied. So when you look at the black bars are individuals that had what he calls stable left frontally active. So the left side of their brain was more active and more stably active. And the gray bars are people that had the right side more active. And when you look at the bars, you can see that people that declared that they had more negative effect, they had the self-questionnaires, and you can declare, well, often I feel sorrow, often I feel bad. Those people had more of the right side of the brain activated. And the people with positive effect had more the left side of the brain activated. So this led him to believe or to see that the left side of the brain was deeply related to the positive effect, to the expression of positive effect. The second thing that he tried, so he thought, well, this is correlated with how you feel, but does this have an impact on other parts of your body? Because when he researched that parts of the brain that were activated, he not only found the left or right side of the prefrontal part of the brain, but he also found other parts involved, such as the amygdala, the hippocampus. And just to summarize a little bit, the amygdala is responsible for the fight or flight reactions, adrenaline or impulse to fight, and the hippocampus is related to your cognitive learning. So then he thought, well, if there is an influence on these parts, and amygdala is mostly, or one of the responsibilities of the amygdala is triggering the cortisol levels of your body. Is there a difference? So he studied for this, it's the graph on the left side. He studied rhesus monkeys. So I'm pretty sure this is not news to you, that many monkeys, they are capable of expressing affectivity, very similar to humans, actually. And he had the same thing, some monkeys that were mostly positive, some monkeys that were mostly negative. And he also measured, to take the same brain images that he was doing for people. And then he measured the cortisol levels in the morning. So cortisol varies along the day, throughout the day for everyone. It's higher in the morning, it's lower in the night. And it's normal that you have cortisol levels higher and lower. What is not normal is if you have cortisol levels high all the time. This brings many different diseases. It's very known, from heart disease, obesity, diabetes, immunity, lower immunity system. So on the graph on the left side, he observed that the monkeys that had the left side of the brain more activated had also less cortisol levels. And then on the right side is another study that those were in humans already. He had this idea that, well, if cortisol affects your immune system, how does this affect your immune system? So he took some people, it's mainly people with average 58 years old, and he applied a vaccine for flu, so anti-flu vaccine. He measured the images of the brain before and after, and then he noticed when you see the graph, the black bar are the people that had the right side of the brain activated and their levels of increase in antibodies against flu. And the people with the left side of the brain activated, their levels of antibodies against flu, this 6 months after the vaccine. Then later, he thought, well, there's all this impact, so what happens with the experienced meditation practitioners? What difference do they have by practicing meditation? And he knows that, so I don't know if you know about it, but I just read, I don't know a lot about it, but he mentioned there are different kinds of meditation, and some of it is what it's called compassion meditation. There are different focuses, they focus on different things on the meditation practice. And many of those are related to the positive affectivity. Like compassion is one of the positive effects. So he wanted to know what happens to the practitioners, to the meditation practitioners. And he went to study them. This is a very curious story that I don't have the time to show you all the things that he talks about, but it's very funny when he started studying the practitioners. But he said that the average hours of what he calls experienced practitioners here is 34,000 hours of meditation. And then what he did to compare is take some people, normal people, and submit them to a compassion meditation training together with the normal meditation training. So they train meditation for 1 hour for 1 week. That's all. And he also took the brain images again, and these pictures here, they just show what parts of the brain were activated. And this test was like this. He put people in the MRI scanner, and he would release sounds of suffering. And he mentions that some of the sounds were really people in real suffer. And the people were guided to meditate with the training that they had before and meditate through this experience of having triggered in their ears or their minds the suffering of other people. So those are the areas that were activated, and the graphs, the red bars are the activation on the experienced practitioners, and the blue bars were the normal people that took the training for 1 week. Where you see poor and good is because they declared their good blocks of meditation or poor blocks of meditation. So whenever they felt that they were really in good state of meditation or not as good state of meditation in the practice. So as you can see, when you look at the red bars, this is those two areas. The D is related to the AI and the E is related to the INS. That's in the images, how much they were activated or deactivated. When you see the blue, it's because it's reduced activity. And when you see, sorry, not the blue, the lower bars below the X line, it's the lower level of activity. So what he could see here is that, well, of course, the practitioners, they were able to have their areas activated, whether in good or poor blocks of meditation, but of course, better in the good blocks of meditation. But for the beginners or the ones that trained only for a week, when they had the poor blocks of meditation, those areas were inactivated. But when they were in a good state of meditation, they had more activity too in those areas. And if you notice the difference in between the poor block and the good block, you'll see how much difference it is even for the beginners, the beginning practitioners. And what are those areas that were activated? Those areas were related with empathy. They are related with empathy, in being able of putting yourself in another one's shoes. And the other thing that he mentions is that one of these areas is the area of the brain that has what he calls a visceral topic map of your body. It is the only part of your brain that has this map. And then he tells a very funny story, but this is why many times when you are experiencing empathy, you have a change in the heartbeat. He measured that, he saw that. You can change how your organs are reacting in your body because you are activating a part of your brain that is deeply correlated with your organs. So after this, he said, well, there is a difference. Of course, the experienced practitioners are amazing in what they can do. But what can the short-term compassion training do? Can it be beneficial? That is because he said, well, I cannot possibly stop everything that I'm doing and practice for 34,000 hours of meditation. This is not what everyone can do. Some people can do, and it's good for them to do it, but I can't possibly do it. We can't possibly do it, but can we do something? So then he had several different researches in this topic, and I'm going to talk about only one of them, that he trained some people, this time for 2 weeks, for 30 minutes a day on compassion training. It was only compassion training. And his control group were other group of people that were taking cognitive behavior therapy. And this was called a reappraisal cognitive behavior therapy. And then he exposed these different groups to an economic game that a friend of the university helped him develop, because he wanted to see, well, of course they can say, well, I feel more compassionate now. I feel better now. But are they? Will this actually have an impact in what they are doing, in how they act in society? That's why he developed this economic game. So it's a very simple game where people had to give money. And this was real. They actually received money. They had to actually give their money in this. So to be as close as real as possible. So first thing he found is participants who self-declared as more empathic. He uses this questionnaires, but he mentions that he's very skeptical with the self-reporting. That's why he uses all these other tools. So the ones that self-declared as being more empathetic, independent of the group that they were, they distributed more money than the ones that were not. After the compassion training, the individuals distribute more money than the group that was assigned to reappraisal conditioning. And he mentions that the difference mainly is that reappraisal conditioning was focusing mostly on improving your positive effect, but focusing on yourself. So this is when you go and work on yourself, trying to figure out why you're feeling this and ways to not feel bad anymore and try to bring the positive effect in yourself. This was this line of behavior therapy that he used. But the compassion training was focusing on others. That was the difference. And then this had an impact on how people reacted in the compassionate economic game, in giving things to other people. He also looked at the brain images. He always looks at the brain images. And those that had more activation, again, in the areas that are related to positive emotion, that is that left side of the brain, all that, they were the ones who donated more money. He also took what he calls measures of self-reported love. This is another questionnaire that they have to fill after the training. Both groups took it. And testing if they would answer, you know, those questionnaires in the grade of 1, blah, blah, blah. How do you think this sentence applies to yourself? All that stuff. And some of the sentences that he had in the questionnaire were, I developed strong feelings of closeness to people easily. I find it easy to trust others. And he had the same result with the compassion training. The ones with the most increase in activation of the same area of the brain were the ones that reported greater increase in love after training. The other thing that was not in this paper, but he mentions in one of his talks, is that later he also did a test of inflammatory reaction. This, he took it himself, including, and it's close to what is an allergy test. So you apply something on the skin and check the inflammatory response. And guess what he found? People that had more positive effect, had the left side of the brain activated, had a better inflammatory response. By better, it means you have an inflammatory response, but it goes away quicker. It doesn't stay inappropriately over and over. I guess by now you must be curious, as I was. What was this compassion training that he did? So how was this compassion training? So this group of people, they had to contemplate and visualize the suffering and then wishing the freedom from that suffering for, first, a loved one, the person that's very dear to your heart. Secondly, to themselves. Third, towards a stranger. And stranger, they would instruct them to think about someone that you see on a regular basis, but you are not close to, you know nothing about them. But you see them, you have their image in your head. Then think about a difficult person, the person that is really, really not that pleasant to you. And then you imagine that person. And lastly, you transfer this for all beings on earth. For the guidance, for the training, they were instructed to say something like, may you be free from suffering, may you experience joy and ease. And notice their visceral sensations, especially around the heart, because as I mentioned before, there is a reflect on how your body reacts. So to summarize the take-home message from his studies. First, positive affect is related to well-being and resilience. Positive affect is related to the activation of some parts of the brain. The activation of these parts of the brain leads to improved physical health. And you can train your brain to activate these areas. And training can really change how people act in society. So now, how does all that relates to Spiritism? And then for this part, I'll pass part of the job to you. I'm hoping I will guide you a little bit, but I'm hoping you to bring this on the discussion because first of all, when I started thinking about it, I caught myself thinking that I should probably paste the whole book. And then I thought, oh wait, no, not this, only this one book. Maybe I need the other book too. So I could not possibly choose all of them, and I would overwhelm you with passages of the books. So I thought, well, let's see how people feel and what if these things talks to them. But that I will bring some of the things that all this brought to me. So first, it reminded me a lot of the lesson that we just studied some weeks ago. We studied this chapter on the Gospel according to Spiritism, blessed are the meek and the peacemakers. And I remember Adriano was conducting and he made sure to bring the whole sentence. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And if you pay close attention to it, it's not saying the kingdom of heaven. It is not saying the God or the spiritual world. It is saying the earth. So the message that all these studies that I saw from Richard Davidson talk to me is, you are better in your physical body if you can train your compassion. There is a direct relation. You will inherit the earth because you will be healthier. And of course, you will make society better too. The next thing I wanted to bring is, this may be a little bit unusual. Your material body is your friend. And this relates to the last lecture when we talked about the ever-caring God. So why is it that you have this material body? Is it to make you suffer? It is not. And our life as a spirit, it changes from material life, non-material life, material life again, non-material life. And the material life is here for a purpose. And this material life can help you change or improve your spiritual sense or sentiment or whatever if you take control of your body. So this is something that Richard Davidson tells himself. We should be able to take more responsibility over our health and over our minds. We can do this. So you can change your brain. All his studies based on what he calls neuroplasticity. Your brain is the organ of your body that is mostly changeable and impacted by everything that surrounds you. You don't grow another hand. You don't change the color of your skin like some animals can do. What you can do is change your brain. This is how humans conquered the earth. It's mostly cognitive. It's mostly your brain. So you can change your brain, and your brain will change your feelings. And those two will change your health. So for moments like this that we are living, I would hope that you, if you haven't started any meditation practice right now, you were seriously thinking about it now, because it will have an impact on your inflammatory response, on your antibody levels, on your cortisol levels, just to say a few. So, and oftentimes in Spiritism, I see that we are discussing how we are fighting this material life and the passions that come with it. And we hardly think about how we can use it to gain something or to improve ourselves, on how useful our body is for that. And this was really hard to choose, but not so much after trying to figure out what I would bring from the books. So I thought this is going to be the one. So this is a passage from the Gospel according to Spiritism, a chapter that we are still to study soon. This is the way in which St. Paul understood this great truth, which said, "When I have learned the language of the angels, when I have the gift of prophecy, which I can penetrate all the mysteries, when I have all the faith that is possible, even to the point of transporting mountains, if I do not have charity, then I am nothing. Within the three virtues, faith, hope, and charity, the most superior of these is charity. In this manner, and without any possible doubt, Paul places charity above even faith. This is because charity is within the reach of everybody, from the ignorant to the wise person, from rich to poor people. It is also quite independent of any particular beliefs." So I don't think I need to talk about this passage, but this is the message I wanted you to live with. These are some of the references. If you want, I can give them to you. His papers are free access, thank God, because many things in academia are paid, but his works are free to access.